This is the best moments of the Barbecue Central show in 10 minutes or less. Ever wish you could re-listen to your favorite interview or segment? Do you enjoy hearing older shows for the first time in years? Then the best moments of the Barbecue Central show in 10 minutes or less is just what you need. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the best moments of the Barbecue Central show in 10 minutes or less. Today's show comes from June 22nd back in 2010. It is a double header, and I want to say if you spent any time in the last decade cruising around the internet, you have surely run into Thom Emery out there on the forum someplace. Thom has been around a long time, giving advice on competition cooking and organizing competitions. So let's jump right into Greg and Thom Emery's conversation all about contest organizing from June 22nd, 2010.
Let's go ahead and race over to the hotline as we bring in first-time guests to the show, barbecue promoter extraordinaire, event coordinator extraordinaire, Thom Emery out of California. Thom, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, brother.
Thom, first of all, I appreciate you coming on the show and letting us kind of suck off your expertise here. Well, that sounded terribly perverted, but use your expertise, perhaps, would be a better way to put it when it comes to barbecue competitions, because inevitably I'll get a handful of emails during the course of a month that says, hey, I was at such and such an event, or I hear about such and such an event. How does one go about putting it on? Because where I live is kind of a bastion, a wasteland of non-barbecue competition, which obviously happens to be my case here in Cleveland. There's a handful, maybe 5, 6, 7 hours due south or due west or due east, but nothing right here in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city, the barbecue capital of the North Coast, Cleveland. So before we get into that, and we're going to have you on the balance of this segment and then in the second segment, why don't you give a little background about yourself, your competition side, and how you got associated with the whole putting on competition events?
Well, when I started, there were very few contests in Southern California. None out within 100 miles of where I live. So I asked around, and they said, "Well, you just got to do it." So I did what was necessary to get things going, and it's grown from there. We're only doing 3 contests now, which is really how I want it to be. I thought it took over my life there for a while, and I wasn't getting to cook, and I really enjoy cooking with 3 eyes. On the East Coast and When Pigs Fly on the West Coast. That's kind of a fun thing to be involved in, a couple of teams there. And we're pursuing the contest, but mostly I'm trying to encourage other people to go for it, because there's a lot of room for other guys or gals to pursue this.
Now, is it obviously more fun for you then just to compete, or when you're putting on an event, are you also kind of doing double duty? Are you competing and running the event as well?
No, you can't do it. It's just not possible. When you're the organizer or the promoter, you need to focus on that, and it's just competing while you're there is just impossible. So we pursue that. The Stagecoach Music Festival. I mean, I got incredibly lucky. This thing's in my hometown. I did just. I got a phone call, and one thing led to another, and here I am. We've been doing this for years, and it's a wonderful event. That's we've had to kind of shrink it to size because of space limitations, but it's wonderful. It's in my hometown, and I have a great time with it. And every year I say, I'm never doing this again. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, okay, well next year we're going to do this. So we have to work with it. So.
Now, have you seen, due to the fact that competition barbecue, and I guess barbecue in general, has been seen more in the mainstream, you see it more on television, you actually hear some radio shows, actual radio shows, I guess not internet radio shows, talking about it or bringing in guests that have more of an affinity, more of an experience on the outside live fire aspect. Are you getting a lot more interest or questions about how would I go about doing something like this? Or just as a promoter, are you seeing more interest in general when it comes to barbecue?
Yes, I think that it's a great growth time in the sport. You look at what's going on all over the West. I'm sure all over the nation, but I live out in Southern California, so that's really what I'm familiar with. But there are events popping up. We were just at the Christie's event, and there was probably 12 first-time teams. I didn't count them, but they were just everywhere, and it's a wonderful time. And a lot of that's due to the Pitmasters show. That's had a huge positive effect, and all the stuff that the Food Channel does in general, coupled with that. And it's just, and it's you got baby boomers getting older, and our sport's a good one for an older guy to get involved in. But some of these teams were young guys. I mean, there were lots of 20-something teams, and so it's just a great day and to be in barbecue.
Right. So before we hit this first set of breaks and we actually get into the meat of what your suggestions are as far as looking at possibly putting on a competition event in whatever city you're possibly in, thinking about doing it. You were president of the California Barbecue Association for a while, a couple years back. Any aspirations jumping off a little bit bigger, going into one of the more glorified, well-known sanctioning bodies, such as like an MBN or perhaps even a KCBS?
That's a possibility. We're considering running for the KCBS board next year. It's a wonderful time. Like I said, it's a wonderful time in barbecue, and I really would like to be a part of growing the sport. And we need to grow it on both ends because the big contests are doing really well. But we got to remember that the little contests are important also, and we've got to work it from both ends. So. Yes, that's a possibility. We'll see how that goes.
Now, you're pretty active on a number of the bigger forums, the more important ones, Barbecue Brethren. And you probably spend some time on the barbecue forum, which I'm not allowed on. No names, please. But do you not foresee, but as you're reading, do you hear, and obviously you're reading a lot about KCBS has some issues as far as how they're working in the infrastructure. There's arguing, there's maybe some axes to grind with some of the board of directors. Do you think there's any legitimacy to that, or is that a lot of folks or a few folks making a lot about nothing?
Well, yeah, I think that you've got a couple of different things going on there, and as we play it out, we'll see how that all works out. Because you can talk to people that quote unquote are in opposite camps, and they both are just great folks, and there's a lot of positive things that you can get from both sides of the deal. But it's just I think the real answer, the logical answer, is probably somewhere in the middle, because some people have been known to take advantage of situations, and others are just, trying to manage every little thing. And that's, I think the answer is probably more in the middle. We got to let professionals be professional, but we do need to keep an eye on them. So I guess I would hope we could work in the middle to balance the thing.
There you go. All right, we're going to step away real quick, Tom, so hang through the break, and we'll actually get into the meat of how to put on a barbecue event.
To put in your request for a future show, please contact John Solberg via email at johnjon@thebbqcentralshow.com.
Hey, before we kick off the second segment, I got a question for you. Are you following the Barbecue Central Show on social media? It is easy to do and much appreciated. Whatever your favorite platform is, you can go to BBQ Central Show on Instagram or at BBQ Central Show on Facebook and Twitter. Again, very much appreciated. Give the big show a follow. That said, let's jump right into the second segment today.
All right, let's go ahead and pick our conversation back up with Thom Emery, talking about how to potentially start thinking about putting on a competition barbecue event in your neck of the woods. Tom, thanks for hanging with me through the break. So I guess the first question would be, logically, I'm here in Cleveland. I'm thinking about, hey, I got a great city. I got people that probably love barbecue, at least when it's warm out, because it is winter 10 months out of the year out here. But when it's warm out, I'm sure people love barbecue. So how would I, or what are the most important things I need to take into account and do the footwork on to potentially put together some type of barbecue event?
I would say an honest assessment of your resources. I mean, if you I run into people like the Christie's Foundation. I worked with them, and they had this huge volunteer resource to work from, so they were able to tackle that event. Now they're 3 years in. This is a growing. It's probably it'll end up being one of the biggest events in California. Eventually, it was just about the biggest event so far, because if you have those kind of resources. Now, but if you're just a couple of guys who like to cook and see that stuff on TV and want to be involved, then you got to be realistic about where you're at. I mean, if it's a small group, then you might want to consider doing a grilling kind of contest, or just set your sights at something that's achievable.
All right, so
I encourage people.
I mean, let's use me as an example. I mean, I have a great city to pull from. There's a lot of stuff happening here. There is a well-known rib burn-off here, but that's technically not a barbecue competition, from our standpoint per se. So,
right.
I have a potential of getting in contact with, I guess, some of the more high-profile teams to potentially pull in here. But do I need to scout a location first? Do I need to figure out finances first? I mean, where do you need to tackle from the top down?
It really depends on if you can find sponsorship and somebody that believes in you, then then the whole rest of it will all come together quite easily. But sometimes you have to build them from the bottom up. I mean, my first cook-off had 6 teams and $500 in prize money, and we had a great time. So that we've had to do it that way, and now through working through the internet and being involved in the statewide organization and here and in Arizona, people will trust you enough to mail you a check, because if you got Greg Rempe, who the heck is that guy? Am I going to mail him $250? So that's part of it. Part of it is just getting out there, meeting the guys and meeting the teams, and get on the internet and find your people that are within some reasonable distance of you that could actually be your target for your event. And you just keep working it. It's all about networking, man. That's really ultimately what it is. It's about networking. You look at what guys in like what we've done in CBQA or what Mike Ryman has done over in Arizona. It's all about networking because that's where it works. And people, you get those leagues going, and pretty soon the one event feeds off another. And now it's just like, wow, it's just, gosh, can we get these things all scheduled? We get so many events now.
So you look at some of these areas of the country that aren't necessarily within the sanctioning body of a KCBS or an NBN or an FBA. For instance, here in Cleveland, I guess we could be considered potentially in the same geographical area as the Great Lakes Barbecue Association, for example. So if I have something like that, wherever I am in the country, if I have an association like that, would it be best to approach them first because those are the people that perhaps might have a built-in interest? Maybe they're not willing to take on the responsibilities of trying to figure out what the footwork and the responsibilities of putting together a competition are, but they're the guys that might say, if you can put something together, I'll be the first one in there. Those are the people you're saying you probably want to approach first.
Well, yes, that would be in your situation. I would certainly go to the Great Lakes. There's the guys that are involved there are I know them from the Brethren. They're this super bunch of guys. I met them at the Jack Daniels. Those are the guys I'd be talking to, and then that's a little bit out of your area, but it's a reasonable drive, and that can build on one thing onto another. And you go volunteer at other events that are within that 2 or 3 hour, whatever that reasonable drive that you guys consider. I mean, out here in the West, it's we're looking at much more than a couple of hours to attend events, but that's just the reality of where we live.
Talking with Thom Emery. I'm sorry, we're talking with Thom Emery. He's an expert in putting together barbecue competitions, does a number of those very successfully. You had mentioned sponsorship. Obviously, it's going to be kind of a hefty bill to put something like this on. When you're starting out, are you looking more for just donations, or are you actually looking for cash money from some businesses?
Yeah, Greg, you just get anything you can. I mean, if somebody's willing to help you out with the toilets or give you a discount on the trash cans or whatever you can get, just because it takes everything you can put together. Going back to that first one I did, I did it at an RV park because that's like the ultimately easiest place in the world to put on a competition is at an RV park. And we sold a little bit of People's Choice barbecue, and we raised money to support the local volunteer fire department and had a great time. But, those big events you see with the generators running and the electricity strung out and, you got all that stuff going on, there's so many moving parts that I would really shy away from one of those as a first event because there's so many moving parts. It's just very difficult to do that. And you got to build a team of people that are involved with you and going in the same direction.
Thom Emery joining us here on the Barbecue Central show. Now, obviously, one of the things that's going to be drawing people in from outlying areas is prize money. Everybody talks about, when they're taking into account which competitions they're going to be going to, they're obviously looking at the purse and not only category amounts, but overall amounts. What's for a first-time event, and I know this is kind of a vague question for you, Thom, considering where you are versus where a lot of the other people are in the country, but is there a target amount you would like to offer initially in order to get that initial interest in your event going?
To attract the professional traveling teams, I really think in the West, it pretty much takes like $3,500, for a total purse, that's a fairly small purse. But if you keep the entry fees down, I have an event in Hesperia where the entry fees are always pretty, it's only like $150 to cook it, and we guarantee we'll have bad weather, so it's part of the deal. And we really should do those I Survived Hesperia cook-off, but we have a great time every year, and it's always fun to do it. But anyway, that's only $3,500 is all we have there, and we just said we have simple plaques for trophies, and I've been able to sell that thing out the last couple of years, and it's just a great time. It's a lot of it's just timing too now, because we go so early in the year, early in the season, guys are excited. They want to come cook. Now, if I did that event, late in the calendar, I might have trouble selling it because, the guys are already cooking elsewhere, and it might not have the same appeal.
So when you have the prize money calculated, are you drawing that from entry fees? Are you getting that from business sponsorships, or is it kind of an emergence of all different areas?
Well, I would say you have to count from more than one source. I mean, now some of the guys in Texas are trying this. I haven't seen anybody in the West do this yet, but it's a great idea. I think they do it in Chile also, where they say they're very upfront about it. They say you don't have prize money. You say, well, 50% of entry fee is prize money, or 75%, or whatever you think you can operate the event on. Depending on your location. But that is a safe way to put together something and make it go forward. The KCBS has a great deal with the licensed events. It doesn't cost you anything. I mean, I think all you have to do is cover the rep's place to stay and his, a little bit of gasoline for the rep. And if you go and volunteer you could probably get a rep to come out for a dinner in a hotel. It's like, those licensed events are a wonderful way to get started. Now, you can't be a state championship, but for a guy who's trying to get a small thing off the ground, and if you're in an area that's really strong with KCBS, that's definitely the way to go. And if you're in the heart of Texas, well, obviously you would want to go IBCA. If you're trying to get something off the ground, you don't have a lot of money. That's you got to go with what's around you.
So would you say that if you went ahead and actually got this first time event thing that you were just talking about versus getting the full blown sanctioning that it would cost in order to get the full KCBS sanction behind you, is that a good way to kind of show the reps that you know what you're doing and that you are well on your way to potentially putting on a better and better event every year? Or does that potentially give you an easier way in to get that sanctioning?
Well, I think sanctioning is just a matter of mailing $300 and then meeting some criteria along the way. That's not hard to do, but I think it's a mistake to not be sanctioned because the teams know what to expect, and the reps are they know the reps. They see who's going to be there. I always use Kelly and Kathleen McIntosh. They do a wonderful job. My teams know that they're going to do a great job. Then they're going to cover up all my mistakes, but that's part of the trust factor as far as the teams, because the guys are going to have $1,000 tied up in this weekend. You can't just blow it. I mean, I guess I heard about an event in Minnesota, I think it was, or someplace where the guy was just unrealistic and had people showing up and what? Nothing was taken care of. So you have to, the teams have a huge investment, and you have to honor them by taking care of your end of the deal. And some of them, people think, "Wow, those guys are so mean to you." I said, "No, they're just protecting their investment. They're not. It's not a mean thing, and not at all. They're doing their job because, they got money tied up in this thing."
Thom Emery joining us here. Tom, we just got a couple minutes left here before we close out. But, in regards to the cost of putting on an event, is perhaps me being a potential person doing this, is it really easy, or are you able to get a really good grasp on what your initial cost of operating event is going to be in order to get those entry fees and all the other associated costs addressed to make sure that at the end of the day, maybe you're not looking to make a whole bunch of money, but you're at least able to cover your obligations, as you said, and then be able to maybe save some for the next year?
I think, Greg, if you go into the thing, really, I tell people, if you can't go into this thinking that you're going to do all this work and break even, then you probably don't need to do it, because there's just so many things that can go wrong that it's really unrealistic to expect a first-year full-blown event to make money, because it's just so many things happen, and then you learn the hard way. So it's really best to volunteer at some of those big events and be realistic in what you're trying to accomplish. I've encouraged people just to try doing a grilling contest. Make it very simple, 1 day thing, no accommodations overnight. You just have fun with it.
And there you have Thom Emery and Greg's conversation from June 22nd back in 2010. Some great advice there. Maybe if everyone spent a little time putting on contests, they'd find less to complain about the way contests are put on. Great advice. As always, have fun. Hey, make sure you subscribe to the Barbecue Central Show via podcast. Never miss an episode of this show or the Really Big Barbecue Central Show again. Thanks so much for checking it out. Until next time, I am your host, John Solberg, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.